gavelled out about 12 hours ago. I think it was a pretty good session. I think we made a big difference. You know, most important thing was the budget. I did find that negotiating how much you increase spending and investments is just as tricky with this legislature as it is negotiating cuts, which was the norm about 10 years ago. But I think it's a budget that makes a big difference. You know, first and foremost, you know me, it was very important to me that we have a budget that was a 2-year budget, on time. That was not true in 2017, but it's true now. That gives you the certainty and predictability that's really important, the confidence to keep moving forward. I think it's an honestly balanced budget. We did it without raising anybody's tax rates. That was not happening previously. And in fact, you know, with a clever negotiation with Matt Ritter, we've got a $250 rebate for all working families just to make life a little more affordable. I'll tell you that it's a budget that's based upon, I think, a pretty conservative set of assumptions, which was not our norm previously. We're assuming that sales tax does not go up. We're assuming that income goes up about 3.7%, which I think is a modest assumption. Unless we have a recession, then it's up. So I think we made a difference there. Everything we're trying to do is about opportunity and affordability. I think the most important initiative from my point of view in this budget is what we're doing on early childhood. I think it's absolutely important to economic growth, and you can't have opportunity without economic growth. It gives mom and dad a chance to get back to work. It's all about affordability, because you know how big a chunk early childhood and daycare can be to a family just getting started out. So if we get this endowment going right, we're going to have our universal pre-K, universal early childhood for every single family at no cost, earning up to about $100,000. Then it discounts from there. I think another thing about early childhood, it gives our kids the very best opportunity. We've got to start earlier. Every kindergarten teacher I talk to says I can tell a kid that comes from an early childhood. And then special ed was such a big piece of this budget cycle. And every special ed teacher I talked to said the same thing. Get to these kids earlier. Get them on track earlier. Do the interventions earlier. And so we made a big commitment to special ed. I know what that means to small towns and cities in terms of their budget. And I also know that special ed works and helps these kids get back on their feet and best opportunity. I think universal pre-K is going to make a big difference in terms of these kids going forward. And I was pretty impressed with Sujata and Miriam. I mean, most people come to me and say, give me more money to keep doing what I've always been doing. Give me more money to pay for the status quo. And that's not what they did. They said, special ed is incredibly important, and we can learn and do a better job of it as well. We can do it with earlier diagnosis. We can have tier 2 interventions so a kid doesn't go right into special ed, but maybe there's some other ways that we can help them and avoid the necessity of a full special ed program. Obviously, you know what we're doing in terms of in-district work and trying to cap rates going forward. So I was very pleased to be able to sign off on taking special ed. It's about doubled since I've been in office. Most of that in the last year or so, and over the next couple of years as well, a 50% increase over that period of time. You know, it was a tricky budget also just because while we're increasing funding in all these different categories, some people don't feel it because they use their one-time COVID money to pay for operating expenses. And a lot of the reports you read is, oh my gosh, there's a big cut. No, there isn't. When it comes to UConn, we have the biggest increase the state has ever made in terms of per student funding for UConn. It's up about 18% compared to last year. But of course, they had even more money when they had all that COVID money, which was related to the school being shut down. So that's what made the negotiations complicated. As I'm saying, you can't spend one-time money on operating expenses. A lot of folks did that. Some of our municipalities did that. but we're trying to get people a glide path to where we got to be going forward. Housing, we're never going to get economic growth. Keep it going if we don't have a place for people to live, young people to live, workforce housing, getting our cities growing again. They were shrinking there for a couple of generations. They're growing again. We've gone from about 150 million a year in terms of what we're doing in terms of investment in housing up to about 400 million. There's strong demand. People want to be in Connecticut. That wasn't always the case. And I got to make sure there's a place for them to live. I hear that from every business I talk to. I know how important it is to make sure that your kids have a place to live if they want to get started, and your parents have a place when they want to downsize going forward. And finally, I think when it comes to keeping our fiscal house in order, I think we've come a long way since those days when the newspaper said, "What the heck's the matter with Connecticut?" And in this budget, we will yet again pay down over $1 billion in pension debt. I think it's going to be out $1.2 billion. That means that I think we have a chart to this effect, but we have gone from, say, 38% funded in our state employee plan to about 55%, and that was last year. This year it's going to go up again, and teachers have gone from 50% to 62.3%. That gives us a little flexibility in terms of the volatility to make sure that we can continue to make the investments we need and continue to convince people that we're getting our fiscal house in order. This is a testament to the work we've gotten done. How did I do? Did you keep up with all that stuff? I think.
You going to sign the housing bill, Governor?
I'm taking a look at that housing bill. It's so important that we get more housing here, and regulation is one of the things that slows it down. 90% of our housing, Ken, as you know, is I think going to be in our 10, 15 biggest cities. I'm getting a lot of pushback from my friends in Fairfield County. They say this is a heavy-handed state mandate. You're forcing us to do this, which is, I think, a gross misrepresentation. We're trying to encourage our towns and cities to take the lead, tell us where you want that housing to go. I'll give you relief on 830G if you just show us where that housing is going to be, say next to the train station or the bus station. But I got to take a look at the bill, but I'm sympathetic to it.
So you're not going to be there at this time?
Not at this time, no.
What are the concerns that you have with it, other than what you're hearing from some of those towns?
I think it was kind of dumb to put this big number that some PhD said, hey, Westport, you're responsible for this number of units. Don't know if that accomplished much. I know it's supposed to be a North Star, and it's just a goal, and it's just a planning document, but everybody's hair is on fire. I appreciate that. But basically, look, you got to lighten up on the regulation. It drives up the cost of housing. These long public hearings. I want to work with our towns and cities. I come from the suburbs. You take the lead. Show us how you want to do it. And we'll be there to help you. We'll be there to provide some gap financing. That's what I'm trying to accomplish, and I hope that this bill accomplishes that, Sue.
Well, your staff was involved in tracking what went into that bill. I just want to be clear. You're not suggesting there's a likelihood of a veto. You were simply, I take it, being conservative and saying...
I wish I was more involved in the bill earlier, to tell you the truth, Pat, because I think there's some red flags in it, and I know why it makes people nervous. But it's basically gross misrepresentation from the anti-growth people down there that are stirring people up. They're saying it's a big mandate. You're going to forcing me to build housing, in my backyard, which is not what the strategy is at all. It's trying to tell towns, you take the lead. You show us where you want that housing to go. It's important for your community. It's important for our state.
What is your view on the spending cap and the guardrails? If you talk to the Republicans, they're saying you basically broke the spending cap and the guardrails. I don't think you look at it that way. How do you look on those?
The only people that broke the spending cap were Republican governors about 7 different times. Look, what is a spending cap? I know it's a fiscal straitjacket. No, it's not. It simply works on the basic premise that your spending can't go up faster than your income. And for the first time in a long time, our income is growing, and we have a growing economy, and growing compared to our peers. And that allows us to spend more and still stay within, honestly balanced budgeting. That's what we've done in this budget, and I'm proud of where we are.
Well, Representative Candelora likened you to P.T. Barnum, and the word he used was you eviscerated the spending caps. There clearly has been an effort in the last few weeks, if not month or so, to scuff you up a bit, whether or not you run for a third term or whether they're trying to discourage you. So how would you frame, again, your compromise on that? You also have people on the left who have complained that you are far too unwilling to meet certain needs. So what is, in your view, what is the realistic take on the political space that Ned Lamont occupies in Connecticut?
Probably in the center. You're right. I've got about 187 people in this building that wishes I was spending a lot more. And that includes Republicans. I was a little surprised when I go to India and all of a sudden I find out there's a special session. They want to spend $40 million more, which would break through the spending cap. And I said, well, we can't do that. I don't think the Republicans will stand for that. And they said, oh, no, the Republicans want to spend $100 million more. So there's an appetite for increased spending here. I've tried to make the key commitments I can to keep this economy growing. Again, affordability being a key priority and opportunity. And on the other side, no Republican voted for my budget in 2019. I inherited $2 billion deficits as far as the eye could see. That was a tough negotiation. And not one Republican did it because they said it's built on a house of cards. You're going to be in deficit within 2 years. You're going to be raising taxes. Well, it's 6 years later. Stop crying wolf.
Is this the product of somebody who deserves another term?
I don't know. I told you I'd get back to you. I guess I got to get back to you. I'm thinking about it seriously, Paz. I love the job. I think we've had extraordinary progress compared to where we were, say, 10 years ago. I think Susan and I are a pretty good team. So if you had asked me a year ago, I would have said, no, I think the state's on a good trajectory. We've stabilized things. We're growing again. It's time to pass the mantle. But it's also an incredibly complicated time right now. Starting with all the uncertainty of Washington, the increased possibility of a recession. So maybe it's a time where experience makes a difference. That's not a yes or a no, though. That's a way of saying I'm thinking about it seriously. I'm thinking about it with Susan. I'm thinking about it with Andy Lamont.
Any idea when?
When are you going to tell us? In other words, you have told us in the past that you would tell us at the end of the session. Today is the end of the session.
The session goes for a couple of months.
What is your time frame? That's what I'm asking.
I don't have a time frame. It's when I firmly make up my mind. I'm not going to play games. I'm not hiding behind this thing. I've told you I'm a lot more inclined and interested in keeping going, to keep this positive momentum going than I was, say, 6 months or a year ago. That said, I still have some conversations to make. I put everything on hold during this last 4 or 5 months. We had a pretty tricky budget session to get through.
Does the Trump situation make you want to run more or less? By that I mean, some people
More.
say that the Trump chaos more.
I've been through it before. I worked with him for the first 2 years. I know some of the players down there. That makes a big difference. You've got to navigate through incredible uncertainty since every week there's another changing incoming coming on. It just makes me feel like this may be a good place for me to be.
In the New York debate last night, former Governor Cuomo mentioned Trump a number of times and how he's the only one who can take on Trump and made that pretty much a pinnacle of his and why he should be elected. Is that your tactic, or do you think that governors need to be aware of that, but is that what your style would be?
I think Andrew and I have different styles. But look, I know what our principles are. I know what our values are. I know where I stand up, but I also don't go out of my way to pick a fight. And, I'm working with the White House on things like energy. I But if you want to come to one of my schools and try and take a dreamer out of that classroom, I'll be standing there at the door. So I don't need to go out and pick a fight, but I think people know where I stand.
You talk about people might want to see experience on the ballot next year. There are half a dozen Democrats who, if you signaled something other than that you're going to run again, would jump into this race. Are you saying that you don't see anyone right now who has the right or requisite experience to be governor in this moment? And if so, why is the theory of your case that you have this experience?
Look, we got some extraordinary folks in the Democrats, and I work very closely with each and every one of them. I think it's executive experience, having sat in this chair for the last 6.5 years, having been through the Trump administration, having been through COVID, having worked closely with the leadership on both sides of the aisle, which is something that doesn't always happen in Washington. Getting tougher these days, but still working it. But again, these are the things that all go through my mind, Mike.
Back to the budget real quick. The Conference of Municipalities says they're very disappointed. What's your message to towns?
Let's see. Muni aid is up 32%, and Muni aid is up a lot more than that. Educational is up 32% since 20. Muni aid is almost doubled in the last 6 years. Look, we're doing everything we can to help the municipalities, be there as a partner for them, help them grow, help them make the investments. Special ed was part of that. I know what that's doing to small towns. But like I said before, I like people also willing to come in with reforms. I tried early on. I said, look, this is a state that has more deputy building inspectors and more superintendents than any other state in the country per capita. Finding some ways that you can share some of those back office expenses may help your budget. It's not always about going to the taxpayers for more support. But that said, I'm really proud of what we've done for the cities. Like I said, just about doubled over the last 7 years.
There was an advocate who has calculated that there will be fewer school children getting free lunches, that there was a tweak in the budget, and I don't know if Mr. Beckham wants to jump in on this, but is it accurate that there's effectively a $700,000 cut, and you've changed the eligibility to do that? So please
Here,
explain.
come over here.
The governor proposed the $700,000 item in both years that would have gotten rid of the reduced price tier. They would have gotten it for free. The General Assembly declined to take that. There was also $12 million for free breakfast, universal free breakfast in the second year. They declined to take that. But we advocated for it. It was not in the budget.
Well, wait a minute. When you say they declined, I take it that came with a string or two attached. They didn't just say, no, don't give free breakfast, correct?
It was part of our list of asks when we were at the table in negotiations, and they did not take it at the end of the day. They put other things in that they had priorities for. It consumed both cap room and balance.
Okay. So what was the trade-off then?
There was not a specific trade-off. We had a list of asks. They had a list of asks. We blended those. That one didn't make it. They had other priorities.
Okay. So if you could just, regardless of who asked for what, can you just tell us then the difference in the coming fiscal year versus now? What will be the difference with how many children can get free lunch?
We'll have to get that to you. We didn't make any change in the lunch program. We were trying to get a more generous program for reduced price folks, and universal breakfast in the second year. That did not make it through our negotiations.
Is it better than status quo? That is it in there now? Are they getting more than?
It doesn't change. We
doesn't
change
change
the school lunch program.
The advocates are saying that it was the income limit was 52 for a family of 4, and now it's reduced to 32, something like that.
For school lunch?
Yes.
We'll have to get that. I don't have that.
Governor, what's your message to, I'm sorry, you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Governor. On the issue of private equity, the bill didn't make its way through. Why do you think it didn't make it? And do you think private equity should be restricted? Or are you hoping that can come back? What are your thoughts on that?
I was really surprised. I mean, everybody in this building was very hostile to private equity up until last night. I had a plan in place that we'd have an opine if any hospital wanted to make a change that was impacted by private equity, we could weigh in on that. That didn't make it across the finish line, but we're still going to pay attention to that because I see what private equity did down at Waterbury Hospital and the Prospect Hospitals.
How far apart would you say you are with the Public Health Committee on that issue? Because as you laid out, they had a very different vision of limiting the ability to own a main campus, minority stakes. You're more restricting what kind of things they can do with their money. Are you far apart?
Well, they didn't get anything done. That sort of surprised me. You know, our plan said, Office of Health Strategy, we can weigh in and see how private equity might impact the operations of a hospital. And I think that was a very important thing. We don't have that power right now.
Sometimes in the moment, your relationship with labor can be defined by, again, the issue of the moment, which is your expected veto of the strikers bill. What is your message to labor about the degree to which you have stood with them and the degree to which you have some principled disagreements over one or two key things, strikers, benefits, key among them?
I think I'm more pro-labor than I've ever been. And I think that's true of America right now. We see the hollowing out of the middle class. So we know what labor means. Nobody's stronger in terms of the right to organize and collective bargaining and to making sure that those values are not compromised. I've been very close with, state employees, knowing I got to pay people well to recruit the best and the brightest going forward. I've done everything I can with the trades to make sure that they're front and center in terms of what we want to do. When it comes to the striking workers bill, which I think you're getting to, I haven't supported that, and I never have. And I got a few calls from folks at Pratt & Whitney when they were on strike. And they were less on strike about wages and salary and more about job security. And I said, nothing compromises your job security more than a bill like striking workers that would just put up a red flag to Pratt & Whitney, and they thinking about Asheville, North Carolina. So when it comes to job security, growing jobs in the state, not just holding on to jobs, but growing jobs in the state, I think it's a vote that's important for me to veto.
There was a Republican priority bill that did pass over the opposition of the building trades and CBIA, as it turns out, that would have perhaps made it easier to slow or stop certain siting of certain things. And in particular, they were thinking of a trash energy plant in Plainfield. So what you were asked about this quite enthusiastically last night from what I observed. Do you have a decision as to what you're going to do with that bill?
I have a decision on what I'm doing. Is that the one I'm vetoing?
That's the one, yes.
I'm vetoing that. I just made that strong decision by myself.
Use the V word without being prompted. That's.
Have you?
There are too many one-off deals at the last moment, and there are too many ways to say no to people that are trying to, get going in the state right now. And I'm trying to just speed that up, deregulate, lower the temperature, and this thing gets in the way.
Have you or your policy team identified any other bills aside from this and SB 8 that you're prepared to veto?
Let me get back to you. I'm just beginning to go through the list.
Is the budget a place that there should have been language that would bring Ansonia under state oversight of its finances without a public hearing, without any input from the mayor of
I just read the article about it. I wasn't here late last night, but doesn't sound like the way to do it. We last minute something like that doesn't make any sense. Look, we've got West Haven out of Marb. We're working in a very consolidated way with Jeff to make sure we do it and do it right. We put Bridgeport schools under our supervision, so they're in and out. I got to take a look at Ansonia and see what the terms are.
Is there any wiggle room on tourism? We spoke about that recently, and I've had a lot of comments from people. It's no question that every dollar we spend, we get a lot more. And the current budget certainly has been slashed. Is there wiggle room? Would you consider putting more in there?
I think the budget's done. It's not much room for me to wiggle, but I was reading the New York Times, and there was a full page, there was a big article about pizza capital of the world, and ads down there in New York, and everybody talking about it. So I can do more TV advertising and with a big state budget, but we're also being clever. Anthony's being very clever about getting our name out there. And we do a lot more than just the tourism budget, what we do to support the arts, what we do to support our aquariums. Those are all monies we use to help promote tourism as well.
Kendall, Laura, noting the raises that you have agreed to for state employees led by the troopers, that he raised the question of, are you putting Connecticut back on a track in which there will be an inability to meet the pension obligations that eventually will arise from those raises?
First of all, I think I'm the only governor ever to take our pension obligations seriously and make a difference there. He's right. I gave a 2.5% plus step for our state troopers. I spent a lot of time with them. I think they deserve. You want to recruit the best. I noticed they opposed giving an increase to the state troopers, and I believe that I'm having a hard time recruiting in some areas, easy time recruiting in others. So I'd like a little more flexibility to be able to pay people where I need to hire them.
Is there anything from your proposed budget from a few months ago that didn't make it through that you really wish had?
Little things. I mean, the broad picture, I'm very happy where we are. I wanted to reduce fees more aggressively. I thought fees are an aggressive tax on trades and working folks, and I'm trying to encourage every nurse and teacher I can rather than give them a fee up front. I got something done on that, but not nearly enough. Little things like that that clear out some of the underbrush were, I think, more important to me than they were to the legislature.
They added 300 to 400 million to your bottom line, Governor. I think that's a little disappointing.
Well, it wasn't just them. I mean, obviously we had the agreement with the nurses. They did a little more for some categories like higher ed perhaps than I did. But look, we're talking about a $26 billion budget and we're fussing about $300 million. I think we did pretty well. I worked very collaboratively with the leaders. I worked pretty well, I think, with the House Republicans. Tammy came forward with a budget that I thought was helpful, and she used surplus to help pay operating expenses in the next year. The Senate Republicans were a little absent in the process, but we worked together pretty well.
It was a Republican idea to bond the public benefits charges.
That's true.
A year and a half ago.
Yep. Give a little credit there to Ryan Fazio. He was somebody that we were able to work with. That came together with an energy bill that makes sense. It was strongly bipartisan. It will reduce your electricity costs a little. I don't want to overpromise on this thing, but it starts. And securitizing, I think the storm damage makes a lot of sense as well. It's a good start.
Speaking of the Senate Republicans, they have a theme that you have been folding on any number of things. What is your viewpoint of that?
I wish they spend less time on folding chairs and more time on coming up with a budget of their own. Their numbers don't add up. They couldn't come up with a budget of their own. If you want to have a place at the table, come up with a constructive idea.
New Haven Mayor Justin Elliker released a very strong statement condemning your budget ideas. He spoke of your obsession with the fiscal guardrails doing real harm to students in New Haven. New Haven's a very politically influential city, as you know. You might be going to lunch there tomorrow or something like that. Can you respond to the mayor's very strong criticism of you?
Yeah, I think we've had significant increases for ECS funding and special ed and LEAP program when it comes to the schools. As I said, our Muni aid is by far the highest it's ever been when it comes to New Haven and most of our cities. And so you can't always come running to the taxpayer. Sometimes leadership and management are part of the solution as well.
Have you spoken with him since he issued that statement?
I don't think so. We did a parade the other day, though. It was perfectly friendly.
What do you think of the climate bill?
I think it's a pretty good start. I think, climate's a little bit on its heels. It's not very popular in the Trump administration. I think we made progress there. Couple that with the energy bill makes a difference. Part of what we wanted to do on resilience was, I was staggered when they had that flooding down in the Naugatuck, and I said, thank God they have insurance so they get back on their feet. Nobody had an insurance. just didn't have flood insurance. So we put in place a bill that says you must notify, you must offer flood insurance for everybody who's in a floodplain. I think we're going to start redefining the floodplain because all the flooding happens outside of a floodplain. It's a little out of date.
Are you going to be announcing who your choices are for PURA? Are the legislative leaders correct in their interpretation that you have made a handshake agreement to go to 5?
Yeah. You remember I said in my first address in January, you can have 3 or 5 or PURA's inside or outside of deep. It won't make a big difference, but I'm willing to work with you any way you want to. The only thing the 3 PURA commissioners agree on, I think it ought to be 3, but that's beside the point. We've got a deal for 5 people, and I'm going to make sure it's 5 people. I'll do that sooner rather than later.
What, this year or the beginning of the next term? I mean, next session.
I'm trying to find the right person. I mean, I'm long on legislators. I got plenty of folks, but I'm trying to get people that have a financial expertise, maybe some energy expertise. So we have a wider variety of skill sets sitting at that table.
Governor,
And it's not easy. I haven't found that person yet.
Looked like the study of the bear hunt failed last night. Do you guys have a problem with bears going hitchhiking up and down Lake Avenue down in Greenwich? Keating wants to know.
I tell you, I was walking through Elizabeth Park a year ago, and everybody goes, "Governor, there's a bear in the woods." And I go, "What do you want me to do?" So I called up Katie. I said, "Katie, there's a bear in the woods." She said, "What do you want me to do?" So what I worry about with legislatures and Congress is they either do nothing or they overreact after a tragedy. I don't want to be in that latter situation. I think we can do everything we can to make sure that our backyards are not enticing the bears, but at some point we're going to have to deal with this because there are more bears out there than ever before.
You've got the fence in front of the governor's residence there, and it's not stopping them, apparently.
Yeah, a bear was there dancing on the top of it. Pretty clever bear, I thought.
Are you going to be in the parade in Middletown on Saturday?
Yes. My daughter just said she's going to come up with me, so I can't wait. It's the funnest parade around. Go to the Middletown Gay Pride Parade. You'll love it.
Just go back to Mark's question about PURA nominations. Do you expect to be making 2 new nominations to PURA, 2 new nominations and a renomination, or 3 new nominations to PURA?
Those are all the different options. I got to get back to you on that.
Which one are you inclined toward?
Michael, it depends on the people. I mean, I don't want 4 people who are sort of nice generalists who are coming up to speed and Marissa. That doesn't make much sense to me. If I can find 3 people that really bring a certain expertise to the table we may not have there otherwise, that's what I put on there. Otherwise, look, Michael knows his way around. He's been there a long time. There's some continuity there. So I'll just have to get back to you on that.
You're inclined to renominate him or no?
It depends on who I've got in the mix right now. I'm doing a search. I'm talking to business. I'm talking to academia. I'm talking to the environmental. I'm talking to everybody so I get a wider mix of points of view on that board.
You've been searching for that at least 2 years. So are you looking for a unicorn that does not exist?
Maybe.
Are you looking for another Marissa?
I think one Marissa's pretty good.
Are you saying that, not that you have ruled out, but I'll ask you, have you ruled out the names that we've heard the most, Fonfara and Cheeseman? Are you not thinking about them at the moment?
No. John, I'm told, is tricky because you can't leave the Senate and go. Holly's, I think, very well regarded, has some experience on the Energy Committee, so I think she'd be at the top of our list.
Well, Fonfara can't leave. What about his baggage with PURA and some of the fines? Does that concern you?
Look, it's not ideal, but let's not go into that.
Governor, what were your thoughts on the Department of Homeland Security sanctuary jurisdictions list that listed Connecticut and 6 towns?
Well, Natalie Wagner said they've just dropped those designations. I know that I was talking to Maura Healy in Massachusetts, and she said they had an animal sanctuary that was put on the list. So I think it was some AI-generated list that doesn't, make a lot of sense. But it's just the nature of the threats that are coming at us all the time.
Yeah,
the idea that you cut back on FEMA money and money for cybersecurity because you don't like what we're doing on immigration or trans is just incredible to me. Cybersecurity is important to the country and to our region. You don't cut back on that.
How worried are you about those threats?
Terrified.
Governor, this morning on the radio you were intimating a little bit more about the possibility of Connecticut-based business people being interested in purchasing the Sun basketball team. You talked to us about it last week. Is there any movement on that at this point?
I don't have anything new. I just know that I don't know who the bidders are because that's a confidential thing. But the rumors out there, I know that the corporate community here in Hartford has been very aggressive up front in terms of pre-purchasing seats and things like that to give people confidence. I know that the People's Bank Arena is definitely in play so that you can play some of your games out at Mohegan, some of your games here in Hartford. I think that's an appeal. So I think we're definitely in the running.
The legislature looked to change the process for how SEEK picks an executive director. I understand there was some pushback from your office towards the end. What was the concern there?
I think director of SEEK has got to be independent. Can't be subject to political appointments and all. That's the opposite of what SEEK is all about. And but look, I mentioned my concerns to the leadership, and we got that all put together, so we're okay there. Okay, everybody's raising their hands and doing this, so I think we probably should wrap it up.
Final question.
I'm not going to take the final question.
Final question: Is it harder to pick a pure commissioner than the coach of the Knicks? I mean, it's a,
I know. The guy takes him to the semifinals like the Final Four, and he gets bumped. That sort of surprised me. He's a New Britain guy, by the way, you know.
Yes, yes.
I think Dan Hurley loves Connecticut. That's what I'm hearing, so
Well,
that's good news. Hey, thanks, everybody. Appreciate you being here.
Governor, see you Saturday.
See you Saturday. You're going to be there. That's right. I saw you last time, Saturday. At that
I'm
parade.
marching this time.
I'm on that radio.